I was already running late, again. The kind of late where your stomach knots and your brain races through every excuse you know won't work. I barely had time to smooth down my wrinkled shirt before I was standing in front of the frosted glass doors of Mr. Harrington's office. The man was a legend in the business world, ruthless, sharp, and not exactly known for his patience. "Sit," he said the moment I stepped inside. Just one word, sharp, cold, final. I sat. He didn't look up right away. Just tapped a pen against the desk like he was keeping time on a bomb I didn't know I was sitting on. Then finally, he looked at me, measured. Unreadable. "I have a proposition for you, Liam." I blinked. "Sir?" He folded his hands. "My son, Adrian, needs a fiancé. Temporarily." I stared. "You want me to pretend to be engaged to your son?" He didn't blink. "Yes, 1 month. Public appearances. In return, $1. I opened my mouth to laugh. But the number stuck. Rent was past due. My fridge was a graveyard of leftovers and expired yogurt. And love? I hadn't had a date in months. Still, something in his voice, the way he studied me, told me this wasn't just business. It was a test, and I wasn't sure who was testing who. Why me? Because he won't say yes to anyone else. And because I think you're convincing. Convincing, not lovable, not real, just good enough to sell the illusion. I swallowed hard. "I'm in." He picked up the phone. Dialed one number. "Adrian, come to my office." And just like that, my life stopped belonging to me. The door opened with a soft click. But the tension that followed was anything but quiet. Adrian Harrington stood there, framed by the doorway like he owned the world, and hated every second of it. His suit was perfectly tailored, but his tie hung slightly loosened, like he couldn't be bothered to finish the job. Tousled dark hair, chiseled features, and eyes that could slice through steel. Yeah, he was stunning, and judging by the way he looked at me, he was also furious. "You've got to be kidding," he said, arms crossed, brows raised. "Adrian," his father said, unfazed, "this is Liam. He'll be your fiancé." Adrian stared at me like I was gum stuck to his shoe. "You're not serious." Mr. Harrington exhaled like he was already tired of this conversation. "You know what's at stake. The board needs stability. You want your share of the company? Then you do this." Adrian's jaw clenched. There was a pause, something unspoken passing between them. A silent threat? A long-standing resentment? Whatever it was, it hit hard. Finally, Adrian's eyes flicked back to me, filled with skepticism. "Are you actually okay with this? Or do you just need the money?" I felt like someone had just yanked the rug out from under me. Not because he was wrong, but because he was right. Still, I met his gaze head on. "Does it matter?" I asked. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I guess not." Mr. Harrington handed him a manila envelope. 3 public events. A weekend together at the lake house to prepare. Keep it convincing. Adrian didn't open it, didn't even glance at it. Just tossed it onto the desk like it was beneath him. "Fine, but don't expect me to enjoy it." His father's lips curled. "Just a bit. Victory. Maybe." Adrian turned to leave but paused. His hand on the doorknob. He looked at me one last time. Eyes narrowing, not with hate. Exactly. But something else. Caution. Maybe. Curiosity. Or maybe the faintest hint of doubt. And then he was gone. I sat there in silence, wondering what I had just agreed to. This wasn't a date. This was a performance. And I had just signed up to play the leading role in a production I didn't fully understand, with a man who clearly wanted nothing to do with me. Mr. Harrington stood, brushing invisible lint from his sleeve. "You'll receive a schedule by tomorrow morning." "That's it?" I asked. "That's it," he replied, already turning away. I walked out of that office with $1 on the line. A fake engagement I didn't ask for. And a partner who already hated me. But deep down, something told me this wasn't just about money. This was the beginning of something far more complicated. The night of the gala came faster than I expected. I stood in front of the mirror in a borrowed tux, trying to remember how to breathe. The bow tie felt like a noose. And the butterflies in my stomach weren't exactly gentle. This wasn't just some dinner party, this was a high-profile black tie event hosted by Harrington Enterprises. Politicians, investors, media, people who'd smell a lie from across the ballroom. And I was supposed to be part of one. Outside the Grand Hotel, I spotted Adrian leaning against a sleek black car like he belonged in a magazine ad. His hair was effortlessly perfect. his suit tailored within an inch of its life. And his expression was unreadable, cool, bored, detached. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just opened the passenger door for me without a word. Inside the car, the silence was thick. "You clean up well," I offered, trying to break the tension. Adrian didn't look at me. "We're late. Don't talk unless you need to." I bit back a reply. This wasn't about friendship. This was business. I needed to remember that. The ballroom sparkled like a dream, crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, a string quartet playing softly in the corner. Everywhere I looked, there were polished shoes, manicured hands, and conversations filled with money and power. We were announced as a couple, Adrian Harrington and his fiancée, Liam Brooks. I almost forgot to smile. Adrian slipped his hand around my waist, firm and practiced, like he'd done it 100 times. But I could feel the tension in his fingertips, the stiffness in his posture. We were acting, selling a lie, but every now and then, his hand would linger a second too long. His glance would flick toward me with something like hesitation, or doubt, or something deeper he didn't want to admit. Hours passed in a blur of introductions and small talk. I smiled until my cheeks ached. Adrian played his role perfectly. But every so often, his smile would falter, just slightly, like the mask was slipping. Later, on the balcony overlooking the city, the air cool against my face, I found him standing alone, drink in hand, eyes on the skyline. "You always this quiet?" I asked. He didn't look at me. "Only when I'm pretending to be in love." I swallowed. "You're good at it." He turned slowly, meeting my eyes for the first time all night. "You're not terrible either." We stood there in silence for a while, the buzz of the party distant behind us. Then, so softly I almost missed it, he said, "Do you ever wonder what it'd be like if none of this was fake?" I didn't answer right away. Because yeah, I'd wondered. Every day since I met him. We pulled up to the Harrington family lake house just before sunset. It wasn't a house. It was a statement, modern glass walls, clean architectural lines, and a view of the water that looked like something out of a magazine. Peaceful, isolated, and exactly where two fake fiancés were supposed to bond before their next big public appearance. Adrian stepped out of the car first, barely glancing at me. He didn't speak as we brought our bags inside. Didn't ask if I needed help. He moved through the space like he was alone, like I wasn't even there. Still, the silence between us felt different now. Less cold, more uncertain, like we were both waiting for something neither of us knew how to say. I settled into the guest bedroom, which, ironically, shared a glass wall with the main suite. No curtains, no privacy, just more awkward tension between two men pretending not to care. That night, we made a show of cooking dinner together, at least for the sake of the staff who'd pre-stocked the fridge and clearly reported everything back to Mr. Harrington. Adrian chopped vegetables with robotic precision. I stirred pasta like it was a distraction from the fact that I couldn't stop glancing at him. At one point, our hands brushed when we reached for the same bottle of wine. He froze. So did I. But neither of us pulled away. Later, we sat on the oversized couch with a glass of bourbon between us and a movie playing we didn't watch. Adrian's tie was off, shirt half unbuttoned, the image of controlled chaos. I could feel the tension rolling off him like heat. "You don't have to keep pretending when we're alone," he said suddenly, his voice quiet. I glanced at him. I wasn't aware I was pretending. He turned toward me. "Aren't you?" I should have lied, should have brushed it off, but something about the way his voice dropped made it impossible. "Are you?" I asked. He didn't answer, just stared at me, his expression unreadable, his guard finally cracking. Then, without warning, he stood and poured another drink. The ice clinked in the glass, loud in the silence. "This is dangerous," he muttered. I swallowed hard. Yeah, and yet neither of us moved. The air between us was heavy, charged, a current waiting to snap. He set his glass down, took a step closer, then another, close enough that I could see the hesitation in his eyes, and the want just beneath it. His fingers twitched at his sides, like he was fighting every instinct to reach for me. And finally, he lost. He whispered my name, just once, and when his hand brushed my arm. Slow and deliberate. I didn't stop him. I didn't want to. And neither did he. I woke up before the sun. Not out of regret, not even confusion, just awareness. The kind you feel in your bones when something has changed and there's no going back. The room was still dim, bathed in that early blue-gray light that made everything seem softer, quieter. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, trying to replay the night in my head, not because I'd forgotten, but because I didn't want to. Adrian was next to me, asleep on his side, one hand resting just inches from mine, as if even in sleep he didn't want to stray too far. His face, usually so guarded, so controlled, was completely relaxed, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. The sharp angles had softened. His breath was slow, steady. He looked peaceful, and that scared the hell out of me, because this wasn't part of the deal. When he finally stirred, blinking slowly and turning his head toward me, I braced myself for the awkward morning after moment, the tension, the denial, but it didn't come. Instead, his gaze held mine for a long, quiet moment, no masks, no distance. "Morning," he said, voice rough from sleep. I nodded, suddenly unsure of everything except the way his voice made my heart skip. He reached out, just barely, and let his fingers brush mine. A small, simple gesture, but it spoke louder than any words either of us could manage. Later that morning, we returned to the city. Back to reality, back to pretending, only now, it wasn't really pretending anymore. We stood in Mr. Harrington's office like two soldiers reporting for duty. The man himself barely looked up from his paperwork. "Well?" he asked. Adrian didn't hesitate. He reached for my hand, right there, in front of his father, and held it, firm, steady, like it meant something. I didn't even hear what Mr. Harrington said next. Couldn't. All I could focus on was the quiet certainty in Adrian's grip. The way his thumb brushed over mine, like a silent promise. He didn't let go. Not when the conversation ended. Not when we stepped out of the office. Not even when the elevator doors closed behind us. I looked at him, searching for doubt, for hesitation. There wasn't any. Maybe it had all started as a transaction. A lie wrapped in polished suits and practiced smiles. But standing beside him now, his hand still in mine, I knew the truth. This wasn't just part of the performance anymore. And whatever came next, we were stepping into it together. The days that followed should have gone back to routine, appearances, headlines, dinner reservations at places neither of us liked. But they didn't. Something had shifted between us that weekend. And no matter how hard we tried, we couldn't ignore it. We still played the part, public smiles, the occasional hand-holding, shoulder touches for the cameras, but behind closed doors, something else was growing. Quiet moments, shared laughter, long silences that didn't feel awkward anymore. It was no longer about fooling anyone else. The only people we were fooling were ourselves. Adrian had become different. Not completely, he was still guarded, still stubborn, still quick to deflect with sarcasm. But there were cracks in his armor now. Soft edges I hadn't seen before. The way his eyes lingered on me when he thought I wasn't looking. The way he remembered how I liked my coffee. The way his hand would find mine when no one else was around, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. And that terrified me, because this wasn't supposed to happen. I told myself that from the start. It was a job, a temporary arrangement, a paycheck with a script. But the lines had blurred. The script was long gone. One night, about a week before our final event, I found him alone on the rooftop of his apartment building, staring out over the city with a drink in hand. He didn't flinch when I stepped beside him. "I used to come up here when I was a kid," he said, his voice low, when things got loud at home. I glanced at him, surprised by the vulnerability. "Loud?" He gave a small, bitter laugh. "My father doesn't argue. He commands. But my mom, she used to fight back. Until she stopped. I didn't press. I just listened." "You ever feel like you're just filling in the blanks?" he asked. "Like your whole life was written by someone else, and you're just performing it?" I looked down at the glass in his hand, then back at him. "Every day." He turned to me then, really looked at me. "What are we doing, Liam?" I hesitated. "Right now?" "In general." I swallowed hard. "I don't know anymore." He nodded, then stepped closer, too close. His hand brushed mine again. Light, searching. We'd done this dance before. But this time, I didn't pull away. "I want it to be real," he said, almost a whisper. "But I don't know how." My chest tightened. "I want that too." He leaned in then, not rushed. Not desperate. Just honest. And when he kissed me, it wasn't part of the performance. It was messy, hesitant, filled with all the things we hadn't said. But later that night, when we lay in bed, tangled in silence, I felt it creeping in, the fear. Not of being caught, not of falling, but of what happened when this ended. Because no matter how real it felt, we both knew the clock was ticking. The deal was almost up. And we hadn't talked about what came next. The next morning, Adrian was distant, quiet. The softness from the night before was gone. He'd built the walls back up, brick by brick. Something wrong? I asked over breakfast. He shook his head, not looking up from his coffee. We're fine. But we weren't. I could feel the shift. Like he was pulling away before I could. Later that day, I caught him on the phone in his office. His voice low, clipped. No, it's almost done. I'll handle it, yeah. He doesn't know. My stomach dropped. When he saw me in the doorway, his face went pale. Who was that? I asked, keeping my voice steady. No one. Did you just say I don't know something? He stood quickly. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. But he didn't. He just stood there, lips pressed in a tight line, eyes full of things he wouldn't say. I left without another word. For the first time since this whole thing started, I didn't know if I could trust him. And worse, I wasn't sure I could trust myself. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the couch in my apartment, still half packed with clothes I'd never finished unpacking from the lake house, staring at the ceiling and wondering how it all went sideways. A week ago, Adrian had kissed me like I was the only thing real in his life. Now he couldn't even look me in the eye. The phone call haunted me. I'll handle it, he doesn't know. What didn't I know? I kept telling myself it was nothing. A misunderstanding. That he would call, show up, explain everything the way people do in movies. But the silence stretched into the next day. Then the day after. And still, nothing. Until the morning of the final event. A company banquet celebrating Harrington Enterprises' latest merger. The last stop on this fake fiancé tour. The grand finale. After tonight, the contract would end, the charade would be over. And I go back to being just Liam. I almost didn't go. But something in me, stubbornness, pride, or maybe hope, got dressed anyway. The ballroom was glittering again. Just like the first night. Champagne, music, laughter, everyone shaking hands. Air kissing cheeks, pretending they weren't calculating each other's net worth. It was all the same. Except I wasn't. Adrian was already there when I arrived, standing near the stage with his father and a board member, looking every bit the golden heir. Sharp suit, confident smile, not a single crack showing. He saw me before I saw him. And for a second, just one, his expression faltered. Barely, but enough. When the speeches were over and the cameras began to flash, Mr. Harrington took the mic. He spoke about leadership, legacy, and the importance of stability in a modern company. Then, he gestured to Adrian. My son, he said proudly, is engaged to a man who has brought him a sense of balance and purpose I've never seen before. Let's welcome them. The spotlight found us. I stood frozen, every instinct screaming to run. This wasn't mine. It had never been mine. But then Adrian stepped off the stage and came straight to me. He didn't smile, didn't say a word. He just reached out and took my hand, firm, steady, like it meant something, like it always had. The room clapped politely. Someone took a photo, and somewhere behind us, Mr. Harrington nodded in satisfaction. But none of that mattered. Because when Adrian looked at me, really looked at me, it wasn't like it had been before. There was no act in his eyes now. No calculation. Just truth. We stepped away from the crowd. Down a quiet hallway lit by soft sconces and expensive art. I turned to him, heart pounding. You lied, I said, not accusing, just tired. That call, you said I didn't know something. Adrian ran a hand through his hair. The first sign of nerves I'd seen all night. I was trying to end it. He admitted, the deal, the fake engagement. I told my father I didn't want to pretend anymore. Why didn't you just tell me? Because I was afraid you'd think I was walking away. Aren't you? He stepped closer. Not if there's something real here. I stared at him. Is there? His answer was soft, but it hit me like a freight train. I haven't stopped thinking about you since the first time you laughed at me in my father's office. I swallowed hard. That wasn't a laugh. That was panic. He smiled. And for the first time, I believed him. Not just in what he said, but in us. Maybe we were a mess. Maybe none of this started the right way. But somehow, we'd stumbled into something real. And neither of us wanted to walk away. He leaned in, slow and cautious. giving me every chance to say no. I didn't. When our lips met, the world around us fell quiet. This wasn't part of the deal. This wasn't scripted. This was real. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine and whispered, "No more pretending." And I nodded, breathless. Good, because I stopped pretending a long time ago.